Hello Summoners, and welcome back to our Theorycrafting project, where I'm presenting different builds for units stuck in Alt Hell. Last time we looked at units who were treated the worst. Those poor souls stuck in double Alt Hell. This time we'll look into units who have been stuck in Alt Hell the longest, outside the ones that were covered in the previous video. If you're looking for an ego, that's what that video is for. That said, even if you are wanting him, I doubt you'll be disappointed with the 5 units I have to present to you today. The first of these units is Hardin, who's been stuck in Alt Hell since the first Fallen banner in May of 2018. Spoilers ahead for Mystery of the Emblian. Originally from the Arcanea titles, Hardin was originally a noble cavalier and Prince of Orlus, who served as an ally to Marth in the War of Shadows. He was truly a noble individual, freeing slaves and offering them a chance to become Knights of the Realm. The backstory to the Wolfguard we saw in the last Arcanean New Heroes banner. He was loved and respected by all those who knew him. However, after the war, due to his dissatisfaction with his marriage to Nina, Hardin was tempted and corrupted by the spirit of Garneth, transforming him into a powerful yet despotic emperor. While we do have his fallen emperor form in the game, and have for years, his original version has yet to be introduced. This Coyote is a Lance Cavalry unit with 42 HP, 33 attack, 34 speed, 28 defense, and 36 resistance. He has super assets in defense and resistance, but no super flaws. His weapon is the Coyote Lance, which grants him distant counter and bracing stance, while also granting extra movement to nearby cavalry allies. This weapon is a form of Gradavis specific to this incarnation, and the movement effect reflects his close relationship with the Wolfguard. His special is Blue Flame, which pushes for him to be near his allies, drawing a firm contrast between this version and his fallen alternative. He also carries Joint Hone Defense, Low Attack Speed, and Brazen Defense Res 4, the first unit to carry this Tier 4 ability. Now the next unit to mention isn't actually mine to talk about. I'd like to introduce you to our first guest, SwiftSea, with his wonderful waifu, Noire.
Hello everybody, SwiftSea here, and thank you to FEHology for being kind enough to invite me to help Theorycraft a hero. The hero yours truly was tasked with was Noire. Always one of my favourite child units from Awakening, Noire does have a showing as a summer unit in Fae, but it's a base form I would really like to see. So I went ahead and made one. Base Noire, I've opted to make a green bow infantry, partly because there are only 2 green bow infantry in the game right now, and partly because, well, her clothes are green. As for her stats, I've opted for a spread of 38 HP, 41 attack, 41 speed, 16 defense, and 42 resistance. This takes her to a BSC of 178. She also has super assets in attack and speed, with super flaws in HP and defense. Now, you're probably thinking, wow SwiftSea, that's a lot of res. And you would be correct. My reasoning for this is Noire was sadly subject to many spells and curses from her mother Tharja growing up, so you think her body would have built up quite the tolerance to magic at this point? As for her weapon, I've decided to call it the Brimstone Bow. Known for shouting about blood, thunder and hellfire when pushed too far, I thought the use of brimstone in the naming was appropriate. It's a 14 might personal bow with the slaying effect. If a foe engages a fight, or if Noire is standing solo, the bow inflicts attack and speed -5 on the foe, and also grants Noire special cooldown +1 per attack, so she can start yelling out expletives at a greatly increased rate. On top of that, her specials deal an extra 7 damage, and heal Noire for 50% of the damage dealt. So the aim with this weapon is to really give Noire a great power spike when she's been pushed too far, and she's releasing her special, or also not pinning her down to a specific phase of play too much. As for her other skills, she comes with Vengeance, which is probably not her best special choice, but I thought it's the most appropriate one thematically. Attack Res Ideal, a skill not in the standard summoning pool, so I thought she could be an appropriate candidate for bringing it there, and it also combines nicely with her C skill. Sabotage Defense, Noire's resistance is nice and high, so perfect for sabotage skills. The defense one to increase her own damage and that of her physical teammates, And lastly, Rouse, Speed, and Res 4. Technically this skill doesn't actually exist yet, but it is only a matter of time, so Noire could be the one to introduce it. It fits in well with the solo condition of her weapon. So I hope you've enjoyed my theorized Noire. I think the combination of her stat line, weapon, and base kit will make her into a very potent magical counter, equipped with self-sustain and a strong presence in both the player phase and enemy phase. Just be sure to keep her away from physical threats, as her low combined HP and defense leaves her prone to possibly being one-hit KO'd, which would be very sad, and don't let that happen.
And thank you for taking part, Swift. And now, moving forward, let's look at our next hero. Veronica has been in the game since day one, being the final boss of the original set of story chapters. However, she didn't become playable until August of 2018, when her Brave Vault was introduced. When I brought up the idea of including her in this video, FEHology scripter YlgrTheCrab was very excited to design a kit for her. Veronica is the princess of the nation of Emblian. While a part of her seems to want to befriend the Askarans, she is still torn within her very soul, with her blood-pact god, Emblian, desiring their destruction. I can't say for sure how her story will go because she's actually involved in the current book, so be sure to keep up with the story chapters if you want to see more of her. YlgrTheCrab's build is a green tome infantry unit, much like the base form we usually see in story chapters. She has 45 HP, 39 attack, 14 speed, 20 defense, and 40 resistance. Her weapon is Ylgrthe 2, an updated version of her original personal tome. After combat, it affects foes within 4 spaces of her target with 10 out of combat damage and panic smoke, which can be a devastating combo when backed up by a strong unit like Xander. She also wields Luna, Attack Res Ideal 4, and even Pulse Tie 3, giving her a strong player phase green tone. She also has a personal C skill, Emblian Wrath, which grants a bonus to attack and resistance and universal weapon triangle advantage to allies within 2 spaces during combat, making her also an interesting support unit. Greil was brought into this world in February of 2019 as a Valentine's art. Spoilers ahead for Path of Radiance. He's the father of Ike and Mist and leader of the Greil mercenaries, as well as a former rider of Dayan, one of the nation's preeminent knights, under the name of Gawain. He even taught swordsmanship to a young man named Zilgius, who would grow to become the Black Knight. He eventually deserted alongside a young maiden named Elena, in order to protect Teles' Fire Emblem. The two lived for a few years in Gallia, raising their 2 children, until one day Greil accidentally touched Laurent's medallion, and, in a magically induced rage, accidentally killed his wife. Distraught, he maimed his own arm in such a way as he could never again wield a sword, and hired the assassin Volk to end Greil's life if that madness were to ever return. Eventually, he would go on to be killed by his own former student, leaving his mercenary empire to Ike. This build was done by Moon, a moderator on the FEHology Discord, who imagined this new form as an axe infantry unit with 48 HP, 41 attack, 35 speed, 30 defense, and 28 resistance. He wields Repentant Irvin, the axe Ike would use to honor him in the latter's Brave Vault. It grants +3 attack and resistance, slaying, and null follow-up. On the enemy phase, he also takes a straight damage reduction of 40%. He wields the skill Aether, much like his son, as well as Distance Dance, Low Speed Defense, and Defense Resistance Menace. And our final unit is from another guest, this time Espero, discussing Bruno.
Hey everybody, my name is Espero, and I am very excited to be here. When Deku approached me for this, I was actually really excited about the idea of making a build for Bruno. He's one of my favorite characters of the original characters introduced in Fire Emblem Heroes, and as anybody who's played Fae for any decent amount of time would know, he's kind of in this weird limbo spot. He was obviously like the antagonist in Book 1, but they really really didn't resolve his plot line, and he's made a few appearances here and there throughout the other books. He's in a very strange space, and we still haven't gotten regular Bruno available as a playable character, and so especially with book 6 that we've got going on right now, I sort of keep hoping that if there is an opportunity to get a mythic Bruno, that maybe this book will be it, but I'm starting to lose hope with each month, so that is why we are here today. This is my attempt at theory crafting what I sort of imagined Bruno to be like, and of course because he is an original character from FEH, I also assumed that he could potentially be a mythic unit. So to get things started, let's start looking at his base stats. He's got HP 39, attack 41, speed 14, defense 40, and resistance 39. When totaled up, he comes to a BST total of 173, which I thought was fairly comparable for many of the cav units that we've been getting over the past year. Granted, most of them are melee cavs, and ranged cavs definitely don't have BST like this, but I figured because he's a mythic unit, maybe we can get away with that. He's definitely really slow. I definitely made speed his dump stat, but once we actually get to the build proper, it'll hopefully make a little bit more sense. And this is where things really get interesting anyway. So for his weapon, I've decided to give him the Impregnable Hex, which is of course a preferred tome. It's got a built-in slaying effect, and at the start of the turn, if his special cooldown count is at its maximum value, he gains an additional cooldown count -2. Basically what this means is that at the start of every match, he's gonna have his special, Luna, ready to go. We love a pre-charged special. And furthermore, if the foe initiates combat, or if the foe's HP is greater than 75% at the start of combat, he neutralizes penalties on himself, he gains +5 to all stats, and he can also counterattack before the foe's first attack. Lastly, if his special triggers before or during combat, he also gets an additional cooldown count -2 after combat, which is basically a special spiral effect. So there's a lot of parts to this tome, and it's definitely easier for me to break it down and point out exactly where I drew inspiration from. When making this weapon for Bruno, I really wanted to draw inspiration from the various iterations of Bruno that already existed in FEH, which isn't very much to begin with. We have Bunny Bruno, the healer, the staff unit, and of course we also have the enemy version of Bruno that we face in book 1. And if you take a close look at the tome that he's wielding in book 1, it's got a built-in Vantage effect. That's its sole effect, and it's not even Vantage 3 by the way, it's Vantage 2. Which is obviously very outdated, and I wanted to draw inspiration from that original Vantage effect and see how we could bring that into 2022 and make a really cool Vantage-based build for him. And so naturally I was thinking about, certain Vantage sweepers that we know. Eldigan and Ares were the first that came to mind because of course they've been around for a really long time, and both of them tend to have this special spiral effect built into their weapon. Everybody typically runs distant counter on them and Vantage, get them into Vantage range, and then they should be able to activate their specials and just spam them in each engagement. And so that's why we got the built-in special spiral effect. That's why we've got the pre-charged special so that he's ready to go on the very first enemy phase. And of course, I had to bring back in the Vantage, but just get rid of the HP condition so that he can activate it on the very first match that he gets thrown into. So that's pretty much the direction I was going with his preferred weapon. As I mentioned previously, his special is Luna, which is going to of course be charged at the very start of his first engagement, and thanks to the special spiral effect, it should be activating pretty frequently. For his A slot, I decided to give him Close Salvo, which was just recently introduced into the game just last month, thanks to Valentine's Crom. It's basically close counter, but with the added increase to your attack at the cost of some chip damage after each engagement. I was kind of on the fence on this one. I wasn't sure if it was better to take the close counter version that Gatekeeper had introduced, but I decided to roll with this one because it was newer, it was flashier, and it's sort of just there's something about Bruno taking chip damage after each engagement that sort of just felt a little bit appropriate given the nature of this curse that's, been bestowed upon him. That brings us to our preferred B slot, which I decided to call Emblian Demise. So this adds a little bit more oomph to what he's already got going on. So if his HP is greater than 25%, he gets a guaranteed follow-up attack, and he neutralizes effects that prevents the unit's follow-up attacks. Null follow-up is so huge in the game, and of course Cavs don't naturally have access to it, and with speed being his dumb stat, he is in no way going to be doubling anybody, and so that's why we decided to give him this B slot and make sure that he's able to secure the double on those rare instances that he's not able to get the one-hit KO through the Vantage Sweep. He also has a second part to this B skill that deals damage equal to X% of the foe's resistance when the special triggers. This I pretty much just borrowed from Brave Erica. It's what really allows her to deal so much damage on top of Surge Sparrow, and so I thought that this would be a sure way to help, give him that extra punch when he's trying to Vantage Sweep these enemies. He really wants to take them out before they can land a hit on him. But even if they do land a hit on him, it's okay because he's got a great amount of bulk. So that's sort of the direction I was going for him. And lastly, that of course brings us over to a C slot, which is Fatal Smoke. I could have chosen a Menace skill like Attack Res Menace or something of the sort, but I don't know, there's something about Fatal Smoke that also just had the right amount of edginess that I thought was just very appropriate for Bruno. Yeah, so that's pretty much the build for Bruno. I tried to keep it as thematic as possible, and I really wanted to build upon the iterations of Bruno that we already had in the game, the Vantage weapon effect in his tome, and of course Bunny Bruno, the spring variant, also has a decent amount of bulk. I wanted to, salvage some of the bulk and make him a pretty good enemy phase unit from there. So that's a direction I took with this mythic unit. Thanks. Yeah, thanks again for everybody at FEHology for allowing me to contribute to this fun little project. It was definitely fun to theorycraft a build for one of my favorite units, and I hope you guys have enjoyed.
And that's it for this episode. That was 5 more units we hope to see soon removed from Alt Hell and brought into the light of base form salvation. Many thanks to Swift and Espero for joining us today. You can find their links in the description and the iCards. If you enjoyed this, tell us who you want to see included in the next video. And of course, remember to schedule another appointment with your FEHologist soon. Goodbye.